Sunwest Communications is expanding our services in government relations. And to that end, I am so excited to welcome to the Sunwest family my dear friend, mentor, and former boss, Michael Lunceford. And we are launching a side venture called LuncefordWEBB Government Relations. Obviously has Michael's name in it, so no reason to explain his particular role. Michael, but share your immense background. You have a long, successful career. Tell us more about it.
Well, you're nice to say so, and I appreciate that. And thank you for including me in the Sunwest family. I began politics when I was 21 years old. And I got involved in politics because there was a particular personal problem that I had encountered. So I volunteered in the campaign of a state senator. And he was kind enough to help me resolve my problem. And I thought, well, there's power in this politics. I think this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so I started out in that direction, and then what was wonderful was the opportunity to also work in local government. I was an intern at the North Central Texas Council of Governments, and then I also worked in DeSoto, Texas, for the city manager. And then I went to Houston, Texas, and worked in the mayor's office in Houston, Texas. And then I came to Dallas and worked for Dallas County Commissioner Roy Orr. For almost 7 years.
And that was before a long 42-year career?
41 years in Mary Kay.
Yeah.
As Senior Vice President of Public Affairs and responsible for government relations around the globe.
Yeah.
And it's taken me to every imaginable country, China, working in the European Parliament, working in Canada, and of course working in state capitals in the various states around the country, and also in Washington, D.C. a great deal.
We used to tease Michael that you would walk into his office and there'd be all these pictures on the wall of the distinguished friends and politicians he had. And we used to joke that there must be a button under his desk. So when a Republican walked in, they were all Republicans. But if a Democrat walked in, he'd hit the button and it'd flip to all the Democrats. What's been your secret to success after all these years?
Well, you can never have enough friends. And I think cultivating friends on both sides of the aisle is prudent because you have to look out for your interests. And everybody has a special interest. Whenever I hear people talk about special interests, I'm thinking, well, they don't think there's a special interest till it involves them.
Yeah. And if it's yours, it's a special interest.
And that's exactly right. And so what we've done over the years was and learned, and I got my PhD in politics and people from Commissioner Orr, who had one time been state Democratic chairman of Texas County Commissioner when I worked for him. But I learned from Roy the value of having friends on both sides of the aisle and also continual engagement with them. But not only the elected officials, but their staff. And I think a lot of people overlook that they see about developing a relationship specifically with a member, which is most assuredly prudent, but also getting to know that person's staff.
Yeah.
And not to overlook the the appointed officials. And if you've got operations in a city or a state, you also need to get to know the appointed officials.
You always taught me, and I say this to our team all the time, as long as it's legal, ethical, and moral, never pass up an opportunity to do a favor or do something good. I love that. So after this amazing career that you've had, what services will you be providing your clients as part of LuncefordWEBB?
Well, one of the things that I would like to do is provide advice and counsel to people, and in order to help them build their capacity and their relationships with the elected officials that matter. They need to go through an identification process about, well, who does matter to me and for what reasons, and then begin to build that relationship with them, whether it's in the city or a particular region in a state, and particularly in the state of Texas, so that they then can have that kind of relationship and go to that elected official or appointed official for that matter and work with them on an issue that they've got as a company. You cannot go to people and ask them to do hard things for you if they don't know you.
Right. Or at the last minute.
Well, at the last minute, it's
near impossible.
It is near impossible because you haven't built that bond of trust with them. And you've got to build a bond of trust with people so that when you go to them and you talk to them, they know that you are who you say you
You're making friends when times are good. We're here with Michael for part 2 of our conversation around government relations and his history and background. 50 years, really, in government relations.
Well, you could have said a long time.
Fair enough. Fair enough. True. What exactly would you tell folks is the political landscape right now and why they should dip their toe into the government relations field, whether they're a nonprofit organization or a corporation?
Well, I think going to the first part of your question about the political landscape currently, I think everybody clearly understands or feels a lot of polarization that there is in the country. But that being the case, it just, I think, accelerates the need in order to develop relationships with people on both sides of the aisle, for example. You've got to get to know people and for them to trust you, and they know that when you come to them with an issue that they can trust what you're saying. Mm-hmm. Because one of the things that I've done over the years, if I came to you and you were Senator Webb and I wanted to ask you to do something, I'd explain why I wanted you to do it. But the other thing I would do is I would disclose to you who was on the other side of the issue. Mm. Because I don't want you to be surprised. Nobody likes to be surprised.
And you want a long-term relationship with that elected official.
Well, you do. And I've had people with whom I've had relationships for that 50 years you mentioned. And so as a result of that, they know they can trust me. And I go to them and I ask, and when I do go to them, they know that I have something that's important. Mm-hmm. They also know that they can trust me. And that I'm going to engage in full disclosure to them. I'm not going to make the arguments for the people on the other side, of course. But I am going to tell them who is on the other side and who's opposed to what I want.
And of course, you've raised money or helped raise money for people on both sides of the aisle over your long career, which means that you've got friends, and you need to build friends because you're never going to only have friends on one side. We've got an election, however, coming up in November. As you said, the country's very polarized. Any predictions?
Well, I'll add my voice to the chorus of pundits and others who believe that November and the midterm elections is going to bring significant losses for Democrats. And I think you can pick up the newspaper and whether or not it's the Dallas Morning News or the Wall Street Journal, or you listen to some of the news outlets that are more balanced in their perspective. And you can see that there's significant difficulties that really start at the top, because inflation obviously is a significant issue. It's probably it's the highest it's been since the 1970s during the days of Jimmy Carter. So I think it does bode ill for Democrats in November.
And not necessarily unusual in a midterm that the party in the White House might lose one of the houses. So history has shown us that that's happened from time to time.
Well, that does, and I think that's going to be potentially accelerated by all the issues that you've got with regard to inflation and how much people are paying for gasoline, how much they're paying for food, rents are going up, supply chains are snagged for a variety of reasons. So yeah, they probably will. But even though Democrats say they are, that does come true and they lose, but you still need to have relationships on both sides, and you got to play the long game. And you don't trade your old friends for new friends, because you wind up without any friends.
So that maybe leads into my last question, which is for organizations that are considering a government relations practice or getting help, or perhaps have said in the past, no, we're going to stay below the radar. We don't want anyone in elected office or appointed office or the regulator's office to know who we are. What's the number one piece of advice that you would give them right now, considering the current political environment and the election coming in November?
Well, nobody hopes or perhaps even believes they're going to be a target of something. But, the world changes really fast, and social media has accelerated that. Before they talked about stories having legs, and you know that better than me because you're a veteran reporter. But in the age of social media, that helps drive decisions by policymakers, whether or not they're elected, they're appointed. And you have to be mindful that today's headline is tomorrow's legislation, and today's legislation is tomorrow's headline. You have to be prepared for that. You don't want to get into a crisis mode. You want to be able to manage the situation. And in order to do that, you've got to have friends that you can go to, and they can help you resolve issues in the most expeditious manner.
So make friends before you need them.
Well, that's exactly right. And relationships are fragile. I always tell people that it's like a vineyard. You've got to cultivate the vineyard every day in order to reap the harvest. And that means you got to have a continual engagement with people. And you can have it at a variety of levels. And that includes whether or not you, as a corporate, you may have a significant corporate presence in a city. And one of those things that you can do is become engaged in that city, whether it's with the Chamber of Commerce or serving on committees for the city. They may have a bond program that the city's putting forth.
Yeah.
And you can have people that are on those committees, because I know I've done that in the past when the mayor of Dallas called me to ask me to chair a committee in the city of Dallas's last bond program. And I was happy to volunteer to do it. And part of it was I also had, almost 10 years of experience in local government.
Yep.
So I have a pretty good understanding of city and county government, how it works, and that perspective.
We are so excited to welcome Michael Lunceford to the Sunwest family and to launch LuncefordWEBB Government Relations. Check us out at sunwestpr.com and on the Government Relations tab, or of course on LinkedIn. And we'll see you next time. Michael, thanks so much.
Thank
Glad
you.
to have you here.
Good to be here.